Okay. Good evening to everybody. You're welcome to another class of quantitative method in linguistics. And myself and my colleague, we are going to be facilitating the class on behalf of Professor Olubusoye today. So I'm going to share my screen now. Okay. So I want to believe that we can all see my screen. Can we see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So we are going to first start with recapping what was done in the last class. So I would want a volunteer to give us a brief recap of what we did in the last class. I need someone to tell us what we did in the last class.
Hi, Kafaya. So this is what we did in the next class, sampling.
Okay.
We talked about types of sampling, which are random, convenient, snowball, and stratify. These are the four. And we talked about their definition, random, which is how we pick, at random, convenient, the one that is convenient for the person. Okay, I'm using the word convenient. The one that is easily accessible to the person. Then we talked about stratifying. What does stratify means again? So I think stratify has to do with group by group, right? Making sure that every group or every session is accounted for, and snowball is telling people them say, you tell one person and all that till you get a large data.
Okay. Okay, is that all? Heritage, do you want to add to that?
Yes, maybe talk about snowballing. Snowballing sampling from the last class, and maybe even help me add a little to snowballing. From what I understood, it seemed like this those people that used to go around that will say when you bring one person, you will get 10,000 naira. So another person will bring two people. That tree, that's how I understood snowballing sampling. So I'd like that you confirm that that is how that data or sampling is gotten. I think I understood every other thing up until
Okay. You want
snowballing.
a further clarification on snowball?
Balling, yes, please.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, so well, I wouldn't know where the idea of that chain comes from. It's probably maybe came from snowballing, but we all know that the end is not the same. For all those referring or referral stuff, we know that the aim is not the same as when you are trying to sample using snowball. Now, when do you sample using snowball? You use snowball sampling when your audience are not easily accessible. Just like our manual said, it says that maybe endangered language speakers. Maybe we can't understand that, but let's take for example all these activists. You have a work on maybe Yoruba Nation or maybe Biafra, and you feel or you think or you know that, okay, in Nigeria, you can't easily come out and say, oh, I'm doing research, please, I want to interview you. Do you understand? You can't, you might not be able to boldly come out like that based on the situation of the country. Then in that kind of situation, you might need to use a snowball sampling to say, oh, once you're able to get one person, then you might want to say that, sorry, please, do you know somebody else that would want to participate in this research? It's not going to endanger the person. Don't worry, anonymity is promised and all of that. And the person refers you to somebody else and say, oh, I know somebody else that would want to do it. Then after you're done with the second person, you ask the second person the same question and say, do you know somebody else that would want to, give us information about this? Another kind of group of people that you might want to use snowballing for is maybe you're working on prostitution. You won't want to come out and say, oh, who are the prostitutes? If you are prostitutes, please come and help me fill this questionnaire. Nobody will boldly come out and tell you, yes, I am. But sometimes maybe you are looking into causes or factors that push them into it. You might want to ask that, oh, sorry, is there somebody else that will be willing to respond to this? Or maybe your target audience could even be maybe drug addicts. Do you understand? Or rape victims. Those kind of group. You might not see them. You can't even put your questionnaire online or say you want to interview and you see people come like that. You have to you might be through connections, referring them to you or you to them before you be able to get those samples. So if you want to use snowball, you must justify that your audience are not easily accessible except through those kind of referral in that sense. I hope you understand.
Yes. So simply put, they might be vulnerable persons or endangered.
Yes.
Okay. I got it. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So do we have any other question or addition to last week's class? We have just 3 in the class, but we'll still continue since the class is being recorded, but you can still put it on the group to tell them that the class is going on. Okay, so let's move to today's class. In today's class, we are going to be dealing with designing linguistic experiments and surveys. And I personally think that this topic is going to help you more for your research in your maybe 3rd semester or 4th semester. I don't know which one applies to you. And it's just this chapter is to prepare you for the kind of research questions you can have in your field of study. And in this chapter, we are going to be looking at 4 things. We are going to be looking at how to ask the right research question, how to identify variables, how to choose the right research instruments. And finally, we are going to be looking at understanding the difference between experimental and observational studies. So those are the 4 things that we are going to be looking at. So I'm going to be treating the first 2, and then I'll hand over to Mrs. Kafaya to treat the remaining 2. So I hope we are together.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. So the first thing I'm going to be treating with us in this class is how do we ask the right research questions in linguistics? What are the things for us to note when we are trying to, should I say, formulate our research questions when you're doing your research? I want to believe that actually research question is not new to us, it's not a new concept, because we all passed through bachelors and all of that, and then we wrote our project. So I believe that one way or the other, we know our research objectives and we know our research questions. But please, if you have any confusion whatsoever, you can feel free to interrupt me. So in our material here, we have about 3 distinct things to note when you're asking your research question. The first is my research question clear and specific? Is it clear and specific? What do I mean by that? Sorry, this class today is more of theory, so there might not be much writing. We just have to, let's talk together and let's understand these research concepts. So for the first point, which is your research question clear and specific? One of the things you should note is that when you're asking your research question, you should try to clearly formulate your question and make it precise. Please make your research question very clear and precise. Don't let it be ambiguous. For example, when you are asking a question, like if you claim that your research question is, what is language? That is very ambiguous. Like, what are you expecting? Your research question should be, you shouldn't use vague terms. You shouldn't be too broad. That's why I said it must be clear and it must be specific. It must be precise. Please, let's take note of that. Then the second point is answerable using data. Our research must be answerable using data. And what does that mean? It means that the kind of questions you are going to ask, you should be able to answer those questions through data collection and through your data analysis. For example, the example I used the other time, saying, what is language? How are you going to answer that? You might not be able to answer that. It's broad, and you're asking for a definition. You can't make any findings from asking such question. What will you now say is the correct thing? What definition will you claim to be correct? Or would you say, based on your analysis, then we can now conclude that this definition is correct? I hope you get the point. So first thing is that you make your research question clear and specific. The second thing is that you make it answerable through data. Make sure that your question allows for observable and analyzable linguistic behavior. For example, if you're asking a question like, how do Nigerian bilinguals switch codes during informal conversation? I think we have the example in our material here. Something like this. How often do bilingual speakers switch codes in informal settings? Yes, this is clear, it's specific, and you can answer it through data. In this kind of question, what kind of data are we going to collect? What kind of data are we going to be collecting?
The data.
Very good, thank you. Go ahead.
Data that shows multilingual or bilingual code switching and or code mixing in a specific area.
Very good. Thank you very much. So you are probably going to be collecting a data that might have, maybe you're asking your audience how many languages do they speak, or what are the languages that they speak. Then you probably ask them in a sentence or in a paragraph, how well are they likely to switch? Then you collect them, then you make your inference. That's how you can answer this question of how often. Somebody might have said rarely, somebody says never, somebody will say often, somebody will say every time, and all of that. Then from there, you can deduce your point to say, oh, for people that speaks 2 languages, they have tendency of switching and all of that. You can answer that by collecting your data and then analyzing it. Same goes for the other examples. So when you're asking a research question, please follow it. Then the third point is, make sure that your research question is related to an observable linguistic pattern. Make sure that it's related to an observable linguistic pattern. What does that mean? It means that your research question should investigate a particular aspect of your language. You know, it could be It could be maybe phonetics, it could be maybe sociolinguistics, it could be semantics. There should be a particular pattern, a particular feature that your research question, that particular research question is focused on. Let's see this other example. Does vowel duration differ between male and female speaker? Can somebody tell me? I think I know, but I'm not sure if I'm correct. But can somebody tell me which part of your of linguistic will this kind of question fall into? Psycholinguistics, social linguistics, which one? When you're trying to know the vowel duration between male and females to see if there is a difference between the duration of vowel speaking in males and in females. Please, let's talk vowel duration. What part of your field of study does it fall into?
Acoustic phonetics.
Yeah, I feel it's phonetics as well. Yes, I feel it's phonetics. So it has to be direct. If you ask that question of language, what is language? There isn't really a specific pattern or a feature in linguistics that is following. It's just broad and not specific. So when you're asking your research questions, when you're going to be writing your dissertation, please let's put all of these points in mind. Let's put all of these points in mind. Your research questions must be clear, must be specific, must be answerable using data, and must be related to an observable linguistic pattern. Okay, then the second thing that I'm talking about is variables in linguistic research. Before I move there, do we have any question on research, on the characteristics of your research question, the proper research question? Do we have any question on that? Okay, I guess there's no question.
No.
Thank you, Vivian. So let's move to variables in linguistic research. So there are two main types of variables. We have the independent variable and the dependent variable. I want to assume that the term is not strange to us, but in other places, in other terms, you can see your independent variable being written as your input variable and your dependent variable being written as your output variable. Sorry, let me see if I can join board. Okay, let me share. Sorry, I'm trying to share my whiteboard. Okay. So for your variables, you have the 10, you might see it's being written as IV or and DV. So when you see IV, please, that is your independent variable. And when you see DV, that is your dependent variable. But in other concepts, your IV can still be written as your input variable. Your input variable. And your DV can be written as your output variable. your output variable. So those are the two main types of variables that you can use in linguistics. And most times, well, not most times, but oftentimes, your independent variable for a particular research question can be more than one. It can be more than one. So the question now is, what is my independent variable? How do I recognize my independent variable? Now, just like the meaning, your independent variable is, okay, let me start from your dependent variable. Your dependent variable is the variable you are measuring. That's the variable in question that you want to see. However, your independent variable is the variable that can change. Vivian, go ahead.
Hi, honey. Please, why are those classified as independent variables? Like, what made them independent?
Okay, yes, that's what I'm about to explain. Your independent variable are the variables that can change in your let me say research question. Like the independent variables are the variables that are not depending on another variable. That's like the cliche definition. They are not depending. You don't need another variable to determine their results. They are standing alone, but they can change, they can vary. Whereas your dependent variable is depending on your independent variable before you can have the result. Go ahead, Vivian.
Yeah, so what do we use to determine like this variable is independent variable, or we just pick it based off the research?
You will determine your independent variable based on your research question or your hypothesis. For example, in a situation, a variable can be your independent variable, and in another situation, that same variable can be your dependent variable. Now, let's look at um, let me read an example for us and see. Okay, I think it must be in our past um, examples that we've used. I need to search for it. Okay, but let's see this kind of situation. Does bilingualism affect working memory in sentence processing? Does bilingualism affect working memory in sentence processing? In sentence processing, let's drop it. The two variables we have there is bilingualism and working memory. Those are the two main variables that we have there. So now, does bilingualism affect working memory? Which one do you think is depending on the result of the other? Is it the bilingualism that will depend on your result, what you have for your working memory, or vice versa?
Please take that again. Sorry.
I honestly don't understand.
Okay. Okay, let me read the question again. I would appreciate if you can write that research question down. Does
Okay.
bilingualism affect working memory in sentence processing? Please go ahead, Ms. Kafaya.
Okay, thank you very much. Just for more to clarify more on what Ms. Sonia has explained, perhaps you understand better now. By independent and independent variable, like Ms. Sonia said, the independent variable is what we call the input, while the dependent is the output. Or perhaps what you are trying to.
I mean, I'm sorry, is this determined by the position it takes in the
I will
in the
explain. Yes. Let me give you a typical example. In linguistic, yes. Let's say we have social factors of, like we call it demographic factors like age, gender, religion, region, and we can also have, in addition to that, we can have another condition, or let's say we have a stimuli or instructional method. How do I explain this? Okay, let's say in a study or in a research, you are trying to determine whether your age or your gender determines how you pronounce a certain word. Let's say R, for example. It's not all of us that knows how to pronounce R, right? If you agree with me. Now, what
Yes.
affects how somebody or a person pronounce that R? Is it the age? Can you tell if it's the age? Or can you tell if it's the gender? Is it that the male can pronounce R better than a female? Or is it that those that are young, or let's say below 20 years of age, can pronounce R better than those that are above 20 years of age? Now, in this case, what are we trying to determine? Who can pronounce R better, right? Isn't it?
Yes. Yes.
That is
Yes.
our, let's say R, or the pronunciation is our dependent variable. That is the output. That's what we are looking out for. That's our major variable in this case. That's the lead. We need to know who can pronounce R, or let's say we need to know what factors or what conditions affect the pronunciation of R. Now let's put R pronunciation. Mind you, I just put that as my own variable name. In your case, you can say let's put pronunciation or R pronunciation. Now R pronunciation in this case is my dependent variable. You can see Miss Oni white screen now. That's the Y in this case. Now, what are my independent variables? I mentioned two. The first one is age. The second one is gender. You can add as much as you think of. Can add religion, all of that. You get just illustrations. Now, those are the independent variables. Those are my inputs to determining who pronounces or what causes the pronunciation of R to be better or. Did you get that? No. I don't know if I try to clarify more of that. Please let me know if that is clear enough.
Maybe. Don't know.
Maybe.
I think
Okay,
I.
let's say,
Go ahead, go ahead.
okay. Let's say we want to determine how gender influences the use of tag questions in a conversation. What are the examples of tag questions? Please give me some so that I can explain
What?
better to you.
Abi? Or
What
what?
do you say?
What? Why?
Yes. What, why, whose, whom?
Who's?
How do they
Yeah.
determine? Yeah. Does gender influences the use of that questions? How do we know? Can we tell? Is it that why, or in our case, we want to look at which of these gender influences tag? Let's say, for example, why. Why is my dependent variable, is my major variable. Now, what influences the use of tag questions more? Is it the male or the female? Those are my inputs. Those are my independent variable. Another example is okay, let's say we have out of linguistic this time so that perhaps you can understand better. Let's say we have series of students doing the same courses. Now we want to know what factors affect these students to pass or fail their exam more. What factors? What are the factors I'm considering in my research? I'm considering the hours of study. I'm considering the hours of sleep, the hours of please give me more examples. Hours of study, hours of sleep. I'm considering the age, and I'm considering the department as well. So
Times that
I
you show up to
decided.
class. Oh,
What do you say?
maybe the amount of hours you show up to class in a
Yes,
week.
exactly. So we now have 5 factors that I'm considering in my research, right? So those factors, those are my what? Are they my dependent or independent variable? Remember, what I want to know is how do they pass or fail their exam? Exam is my major variable in this case. I want to know how they pass or what factors affect the exam, maybe rate, pass or fail. You can call it whatever variable you want, but you know what you are looking for. That exam in this case is my dependent variable. What are the exam is depending on other factors mentioned earlier. The exam is depending on the hours of study. It's also depending on the age, depending on the hours you show up in class, depending on the hours of what did I mention earlier again? So do you get that? The exam is depending on all that. And that's why the exam is the dependent variable. All of those factors are the independent variables in this case. Do you understand it clearly now?
I'm good. Yes, maybe the others can.
Okay, so over to you, Ms. Oni. Thank you.
Maybe wait for the others to also respond.
All right, Vivian is good as well.
Yes, I'm good.
All right, that's fine. Thank you, Ms. Oni. Please.
Okay. So I
Thank
will
you.
just ask one more research question, and then I would want you to pick
No,
the
Miss Honey, let's come back to, does bilingualism affect? You wanted us to write that out and decide which is
Okay,
it.
yes. Does
Yes.
bilingualism affect working memory? So based on what Ms. Kafaya has explained now, which do you think is your dependent variable? Heritage, Royal, Vivian, Mercy, anyone? Does bilingualism, that's a variable, is it affecting working memory? So which one do you think is, Mrs. Kapaya has already explained clearly the dependent and independent variable.
I would say bilingualism is a dependent variable.
Okay, do we have any objection or agreement?
I think bilingualism will be the independent variable. Then working memory will be the dependent.
So we have two different opinions. Okay, so as not to get ourselves more confused, Mercy is correct. Bilingualism will be your independent variable. It is not the one that can influence your working memory. That's why the question says, does bilingualism affect your working memory? You see what I have on the board? This is your why. Now, if your why, when we were in secondary school, and I don't know if you have been familiar with this, like something like equation of a straight line. So you were taught that what if your x is 2 here, then you will use your x, you would have known your constant and your intercept and all of that. And you use this 2 here to now calculate before you can have a value for your y. So if your x is 3, you will have to use this 3 here, input it as your x, and then calculate before you can have value for your y. So this x is your independent variable. That's the one that, okay, you can change and say, okay, if it is yes, what will be the output of my y? If it is no, what will be the output? If it is 50, what will be the output of my y? If it is 100, what will be the output of my y? So this one is the one that is being affected by your independent variable. So what your independent variable becomes is what will determine what your dependent variable will be. So does bilingualism affect working memory? Your bilingualism will be your independent variable. It is the one that would affect your working memory. I hope we understand now. Royal, do you understand now?
Yeah, I don't understand. The last example she gave, Lafayette gave, she said factors that affect how a student fail or pass an exam.
Okay.
So I related that with this one, that the exam is the dependent variable, and then the factors are the independent.
The factors that is affecting exam becomes your independent.
Yes,
Exactly. Bilingualism is a factor now that can affect your working memory. So automatically
okay,
bilingualism becomes your independent variable.
okay, thank you.
Okay, so one more question before I hand over, then I'll be sure that yes, we've actually gotten this part because it's a very critical part. So another question, do word frequency and sentence complexity affect reading time? Maybe I should even send it to our group. Maybe I send it to our WhatsApp group. CLN. Our group is okay. Yes, I'll send it. Do word frequency and sentence complexity affect reading time? So pick your independent variables and pick your dependent variable. Do
Reading
what?
time will be
Okay, Mercy, go
reading
ahead.
time will be independent.
Which one will
Then
be
what
independent?
independent reading time?
Reading time will be independent.
Yes.
Okay.
Do what the question is, do what frequency and sentence
And sentence
complexity?
complexity affect reading time.
Okay, what frequency and sentence complexity will be the independent?
Good. Beautiful. What frequency and sentence complexity? That means we have two independent variables in that question.
Yeah.
What frequency that maybe high frequency or low frequency, and sentence complexity, you can maybe simple or complex and all of that. They can come together to now affect the reading time. So your reading time will not be your dependent variable. What your word frequency is like and what your sentence complexity is like is what will now determine how your reading time will be. That's what you want to test. So you want to test if the combination of the effect of word frequency and complex and sentence complexity, if they would have effect on your reading time. So your reading time is your dependent variable, then your word frequency and sentence complexity will become your independent variables. So in that research question now, you'd have two independent variables. But I mentioned something the other time. I said that sometimes your research question, your research interest will determine if that variable would be independent or be dependent. There can be other situations where you would want to say what is even affecting a sentence complex, what's making a sentence complex, and then you might want to research on different factors that can make your sentence complex. In that situation, your sentence complexity will become your dependent variable, and the factors you are examining or you are researching on that is affecting, that is making your sentence to be complex, those in that sense, those factors will now become your independent variable. Do we get that?
Yes.
Yes, I'm good.
Okay, okay. Is there any question before I would hand over to Mrs. Kafaya? Okay, I guess there are no questions.
Good.
Mrs. Kafaya, you have the floor. Let me stop presenting.
Okay, thank you very much, Miss Molly. Can you see my screen now? Please confirm you can see my screen.
Yeah, we can see your screen.
Yes, we
All right.
can.
All right. So, like Miss Molly mentioned earlier, the purpose of this particular topic is to guide you or prepare you towards your thesis. Yes. Because I don't know how you do your how you write your dissertation or thesis, as the case might be in your department. Perhaps you don't use data. Do you use data? Please, I need someone to tell me if you
Yes.
actually. Oh, you collect data. That's awesome. And do you use software to analyze those data you collect?
I believe it will depend on the topics and or areas of or subfields of linguistics that you're working
So that will
yeah,
determine if you are going to use any software or not.
or not. Yes, yes, that would
Okay, I
determine.
get it. So if you look back to how we started the class, started with types of data, right? Remember, we are dealing with quantitative. And in quantitative, you can have a different type of data. Data can be nominal, ordinal, interval, or ratio. Depends on um, your research field, what you are working on. We determine if you are going to collect all this type of data or not, and then we move to softwares to analyze those data you have collected. That's when we discuss SPSS, R, and the likes. And then we move to sampling. So what's the purpose of all of this? Now, when we go to sampling, discuss random sampling, stratified class, and snowballing, and all of that. And when in real life situation, if you are going to the market to buy something, whether you step out of your house, you must have make your decision, and your decision is based on some factors. You might not know their factors. Factors like whether you are tired, or whether it's going to rain, or whether the sun is too much. You see, all these are factors. And by factors, they are also inputs. By inputs, they are also your independent variables. What are they determining? What is depending on all of those, whether you are going to the market or not? The market is the dependent variable. So it's just to clarify more on, because it's really important for you that you understand dependent and independent variable in this course. Now let's move to choosing instruments for data collection. When you want to collect data, there are many approaches in doing this, especially when designing a survey. Your choice of collection of data is important. It ensures more accuracy for your research outcome. Just like when we say sampling, your choice of sampling determines the accuracy of your research outcome. Now, understanding data collection in this case, the instrument ensures also ensures the accuracy of your research outcome. Now, what are the things you need to note when it comes to designing a research? The first thing is you need to understand your data collection instruments. An example is a questionnaire. The simplest example of it is a questionnaire is an instrument that is used to collect data. I'm sure we all know the meaning of questionnaire, right? We've all seen questionnaire before, or perhaps we've answered or we filled
Yes.
a questionnaire for someone before. Yes. So that's
Yes.
an instrument in data collection. It contains a set of questions, right? Another one is interview. Interview is also by asking questions, but in this case, you ask, right? The data can be qualitative or either quantitative. You ask them how many is, what do you, which is, what is, who is. Those are examples of interviews. You interact directly with the participants. Another one is experiments. In experiments, we have different types of experiments. But let me give an example of a laboratory experiment. We all did chemistry, perhaps not all of us. Oh, I think we are all as students now. So an example of experiment is, let's say in a laboratory, you want to test which mosquitoes, which series or specimens of mosquitoes causes malaria. It's just an example. We'll come back to the linguistic level. Now, another thing you need to know is why choosing that particular instrument. That is the criteria for which you select that instrument. The first principle in this aspect is that it needs to align with your research question. The instrument you are choosing depends on your research goal, your research aim. What are you achieving? Or your research questions. You don't just choose questionnaire because you think is the easiest or is the simplest. Then also the nature of the data you want to take, you want to collect, also determine what instruments you are going to use. For example, if you are going to take qualitative data, then you can either do interviews or use questionnaires. For qualitative, by qualitative, you know what I mean, like who this, a name, what's your name is a qualitative data, right? So a questionnaire is also good for that, or interview. And when we talk about quantitative, then you can use questionnaires as well. Experiments, they are numbers, they have to do with numbers, right? Experiments, questionnaires, and all of that. They also do numbers like frequencies. Yes, let's say frequency of words. Can use questionnaires. So also you need to know the population you are targeting for your research. Your population will determine, or your target will determine what type of instrument you are going to give to them. We are considering, let's say for example, the proficiency of English language among participants. By then you want to know how well they can speak English language. Then what type of instrument do you think is best in this case? Anyone? Hello?
We are here.
Please, can you take it again? I didn't get that.
Oh, wow. So, for example, I mentioned earlier that different criteria will determine choosing your instruments. Did you get that?
Yes.
Now, I said one of it is your target population. Who are you considering? Who are those people you are considering? We determine what instruments you are going to give to them. And also your research goal, we also determine what instruments you are giving to them, right? Now I said, let's take, for example, you want to know how a particular set of individuals can speak English. That's the English language proficiency, right? Now, what type of instruments do you think is best to give to them in this case?
Oh, okay. Questionnaires.
Yes, questionnaires, very good. Interviews, you ask them the way you speak, the way they
Yeah.
respond, we also answer the questions for you. Now, then another one is your availability of resources, or let me say cost also affects what instrument you are going to use for that. Now, then the third thing you need to note is the step you need to take to achieve your research aim. But clearly, first you need to clearly define your research goals. What do you want to achieve? What instruments matches your aim? Then you test run your instruments on maybe a small set or maybe your course mates to see that, okay, this works perfectly before you now go into the field. Now, let's look at few research areas that we have here and the common instruments that can be used in those aspects. The first one is phonetics. We all know what phonetics is like. It has to do with the study of sounds, how you call them out, both in their perception, how the listener also receive it, right? That's the sound, the articulation, and the perception. And in this aspect now, what instruments do you think is best to collect the kind
I'm
of data?
sorry, Kafaya. Please let me take you 2 steps back. Just
Okay.
right now, you were trying to explain the steps to take to achieve our research goal.
Yeah.
Am I? Yes, good. And so you mentioned that in order to achieve that research goal, you are saying that it's okay to have a pre-research, like I think the word prenup comes to my mind, but of course that's for marriage, like a pre-data sampling. Is that what you're saying?
To test your instrument, particular instrument you are using, make sure you have, they call it a pilot test,
That's
whereby
it.
you conduct or you use that instrument on a small number of individuals to know that you are good to go to the field to collect your data from your target population. It's just to test run your instruments with your questions. Is that clear?
Yes, yes, perfect. Thank you.
All right. So back to phonetics. When we talk about phonetics, of course, a common instrument in this aspect is a audio recorder because it has to do with sounds, right? So a audio recorder is a very good instrument to collect your data in this case. Another one is PRAT. PRAT is a software to analyze speech or sounds. The way you call them is a linguistic software. I don't know if anyone has come across PRAT software before. Then another one is a microphone. Of course, when we talk about microphone, it deals with sound, how you pronounce and how the listener receive what you are saying. So another research area in this case is the psycholinguistic. What do we mean by psycholinguistic? That has to do with how you process your speech or how the listener process your speech mentally, right? How you comprehend. That's the listener in this case. Then the speaker, how you produce it, and how the brain process a particular speech. Perhaps there's someone that can give us a good example of psycholinguistic here. So a common instrument in this case is PsychoPy. PsychoPy is also a linguistic software. And all the software are open source. They are free. PsychoPy is written in Python. I've not used it before, but from what I've heard about it, it's written in Python and is designed for creating experiments in psychology, linguistics, and other related social science courses like that. So another research area is sociolinguistic. Sociolinguistic has to do with the relationship between language and society, as it's pronounced. So a common instrument in this case is questionnaire and interview. Then corpus linguistics. It involves a large, let me call it a large web or a website containing collection of text in, let me say, a particular field of study. Corpus has to do with collection of text, collection of words in a particular web. So a good instrument here is a web crawler. An example of web crawler in this case is Google is even a web crawler because if you want to browse for maybe a collection of, let's say for example, how people pronounce, or please give me a particular research area in linguistic that will lead you to go into Google to look for documents, collection of documents to study. That's what we call corpus. And then where you go to look for all of this, an example is a web crawler. And I gave an example of a web crawler as Google, Bing, or if you are good at using R right now, you can scrape a particular website to download all text on that particular website as regarding a particular case study. So that's what we call a web. Then a concordance is also a computer program. It's used to search through a corpus a large collection of tests to find or display every occurrence of any particular aspect you are looking for. An example is an ant cock. Ant cock is also a software and a computer software in this case. Please, all the software, you need to study it, study them, just browse for them, read about them, look at what they do, how they are used, and all of that. You get for better understanding. All right, so when you want to conduct a research, there are two basic research design in linguistic, and they are experimental and observational. We talk about experimental. You control the conditions and observe the outcome. What do we mean by that? Now, experimental designs are in a case whereby the investigator, or in this case, you are the investigator. I am the investigator, and I have series of variables to consider to study. So I either manipulate one or more factors and then assign subjects or each of these participants that I'm looking at to different groups. We often call that a control group. And let me give a real life example in linguistics to understand better. So let's say you want to test if a new teaching method will improve vocabulary understanding. Now, what will you do? You have a student you are taking a particular course, right? Now, you randomly assigned students to different groups, let's say 2 groups. You have students of a group and you have a student of another group, right? Now, on one group, you used one method, or perhaps you have an approach to take them to determine how they understand, how they will understand the vocabulary. You use a new teaching approach on them. Then to another group, the second group, you use another teaching approach for them. Then after some days or weeks or months, then you give them a test to test their understanding of vocabulary and see how far they have understood it so far. Right? Then that tells you which approaches work better. That's what we call an experiment, right? You are experimenting the teaching method on 2 different groups of students. Then which of these approaches or methods works better when you compare the results, right? That's experimental study. In this case, you get to assign the participants to groups. You either manipulate one variable or more. You can manipulate them, you get to control them, you assign them to groups, and you measure the effect of the approach. You compare them and see which is best. Another example in this case is you test how types of background noise affect their reading speed. And this experimental approach is good for finding cause and effect relationships. What causes the new teaching method to be better than the previous one? Then when you want to test for a specific hypothesis, does the new teaching method improve vocabulary understanding? Is that clear? So is there any question before I move to the last part of this? Please, I want you to ask questions because you really need to understand this part very well.
I'm good.
Okay. Everyone else good? All right. So by observation, you observe. It's just as simple as that. You observe and record what happens naturally. No control, no conditions. You don't have to, sorry, excuse me. So when you assign, let's say, let me go back to the students. You have two groups of students, right? Whereby you are testing for which of your teaching method is best for those. In this case of observation, you observe which of them, or let's say which of your teaching method works better, and then you record it. How far does it work? You don't have to, unlike the experiment, you don't have to compare, or let's say you don't have to compare which of these methods works by experimenting one group over another. As written here, no control over conditions. You just observe, record real conversation in a real market is a good example, and then analyze code switching patterns. It's just to understand natural behavior. And in linguistic, it's best for studying language in any context. So I think the observational is more straightforward than the experimental. If that is clear.
Yeah. And I believe that maybe in the humanities we would use more observational studies, and the social
Yes,
sciences guys would use experimental studies.
exactly. Exactly. It's more natural. So is there any question? Okay, so let's move to this one is just to provide you with more tips to conduct a good research. The first thing you need to do is start with a clear hypothesis. An example of hypothesis is, does the new teaching approach improve vocabulary understanding? That's an example of hypothesis. And in this case, you know which data to collect. We are talking about experimental design in this case, because you have to compare the new teaching approach with whatever teaching approach has been in existence. And then the next one is you choose a sampling method that fits your goal. Is it random sampling? Is it stratified? Is it snowballing? Is it convenience? For the hypothesis I mentioned earlier, which of these sampling method that we studied in class do you think is best to use in this case? Does the new teaching approach improve vocabulary understanding? Who wants to answer this first? Anybody?
I feel like I'm still trying to figure out what you were trying to ask.
Okay. While you figure it out, did anyone else get the question right? Okay, so in that case, I'll repeat myself. So I said the second tip here is that you choose a sampling method that fits your goals. And I mentioned that I stated the hypothesis earlier, a sample hypothesis. The hypothesis is, does the new teaching approach improve vocabulary understanding between the students? Now, in conducting such hypothesis, what sampling method do you think is best to use when collecting your data? Do you get that now, Heritage?
Yes.
So who wants
What?
to answer the question for us? Remember in the last class, we discussed different types of sampling method. Talk about the random sampling, stratified, convenience, snowballing, and the likes. Now, which of those sampling method do you think is best to use in this case, whereby you want to determine if a new teaching approach improve vocabulary understanding between set of students? This might be the research aim or objective for someone in the next few minutes. Okay, that means we didn't really understand the sampling part. So in this case, Heritage, do you want to try? Ezeji Royal, Messiani, Olowura Ola. I need to call names because nobody's responding.
I am not willing to try, ma.
What do you say?
I said I am not willing to try, ma.
Just try, give it a try. Trying is not a sin.
Maybe convenience
Why is
sampling.
it convenience?
It's restricted to a certain space, which would be the students of a particular class.
Okay.
And or random sampling. Yes, this leads me to can more than one, I think they've answered this before, can more than one sampling method be used to conduct one research?
It depends on, yes,
Yeah.
it's possible. It's possible.
Yeah.
It depends on the research question, the research aim. It depends on the hypothesis as well. Do you think when you use convenience, you can achieve the same accuracy of your research goal as when you use random sampling? Let's use this case as an example. You said we can use convenience, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So what are we trying to achieve here? You want to test if a new teaching method improve vocabulary understanding, right?
Yes.
First is you determine I mentioned earlier, like one thing you need to do is you determine your target population. Who are you targeting? Isn't it? Are you targeting a particular student in a particular department in a specific university? Then if those are your target population, you need to get to them, right? Either it is convenient or not. Do you get that?
Yes.
So if you are going with convenient sampling, then in that case, you are saying you are not ready to go for your target population. Let me just stay in a primary school beside my house and then use the students there to see if this teaching method will improve their vocabulary understanding than the previous method they have been using. That's convenient, right?
Yes. Because I have
But
not
that's
restricted.
because what?
Yes, because I'm not restricted to a particular age, space or environment and or level.
Exactly. And because you are not considering your target population that I mentioned earlier. Remember, I mentioned there, imagine your target population is particular students in a specific university.
Uh-huh. Okay, right.
Yeah. But in this case, you are going for your own convenience.
Yes.
Disregarding your target population, in that case, the accuracy will be very, very low. the results you are going to get from that research will be very biased. You can't use it to justify what happens outside that primary school. Because,
Yes.
like you mentioned earlier, the age is also a factor in this case. But because you want to use convenience sampling, the accuracy of their research is very low compared to when you use the proper targeted population. Is that clear? So does
Yes.
that answer your question?
Yes.
So
That
if
would
I were you, I'll go for random sampling.
random. Yeah.
When I know I can also use convenience, but the accuracy is not what I want. Now, in this case, the proper sampling you should use is random sampling because we want to look at the difference in the method they are using. We are using a particular student, let's say in a department, right? And you want to compare how many methods? Two methods. So what I will do is randomly create, I'll create two groups and then assign these students to each of the groups randomly without using any criteria. I'll randomly assign them. That's what we call the random sampling method. And then use the new approach on one group, compare it with the other group that are using the previous approach. Is that clear? So another tip is that you use instruments that are appropriate and tested. In this case, what instrument is best? You can either use questionnaire or interview to determine whether this approach works best or that. Then you pilot your survey or experiment first. Like I mentioned earlier, test your instruments with your questions on a small group of individuals before you take it to your targeted population, which is perhaps larger than the pilot survey. Now, keep your data. When you collect those data, keep them organized and anonymized if the case is necessary in this case. Anonymize, that is, you disregard the ID or name or so whatever that is pointing to that person to answer the questions. That is, you are providing confidentiality, right? So, and you respect ethical guidelines. So, is there any question before we call it a day? Okay, I believe we all understood what myself and Miss Oni have explained today. If there's any question, please always remember you can ask questions on the group and they will be looked into. Miss Oni, is there any other thing you want to,
Okay, maybe we should
have?
treat the multiple choice questions.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, good afternoon. Sorry, good evening once again, everybody.
Good evening.
Yes, so I'm just going to launch the polls now. So all you just have to do is to read your questions and pick your correct answer. So are we good to go? Okay, so I'm already launching the questions. Can we start answering them? Go go to the activity icon and check where the poll is and answer the questions there. If you're having any difficulties to be able to locate it, please let me know. Okay, we have 10 questions, and I see that we are not voting. I'm going to end the poll, and you won't be, once I end the poll, you won't be able to vote again.
Reading my questions, though.
What do you say?
I'm still reading my number one question.
Okay, hurry up with that. Okay, so we are still waiting for a few more minutes. Let's say we have 3 more minutes to be able to round up. See that some of us have already picked our answer.
Yes, I'm done.
Where is Vivian? I think she left the class. Or is it still on the call?
Let's she had left a while ago.
Okay.
Okay, so I've ended the poll thing. Let's quickly review the questions that majority of us missed. Sorry, I'm trying to share my screen. Okay. So our first question: what is the primary purpose of the independent variable in an experiment? The primary purpose is to be manipulated so that we can observe its effects. So the primary purpose is such that we can manipulate it and then we see the effect. That's on the dependent variable, just like we explained the other time. So that's the answer to that. I think 2 people missed it. Then which question 2? Okay, only 1 person got it wrong. Which of the following best describe a dependent variable? It measures the outcome of the study, not the control condition. It measures the outcome of the study. Okay, we all got question 3 correctly. Question 4. An observational study is most appropriate when it's unethical or impractical to manipulate the variable. Then you switch to observation instead of experiment. So when you can't manipulate the variable, you switch to observation. Ms. Kafaya taught us on observational study. Then question 5. Question 5 is a very interesting one, getting that almost all of us picked different answers. So the question is, which of these is an example of a survey, of an open-ended survey question? An open-ended survey question. So the question is, what is an open-ended survey question? Somebody is to answer that, please. What do you think is an open-ended survey question? And then you can use it to justify your answer. Anybody? Go
I
ahead.
don't know. I just guessed. And maybe that's why I chose this.
Okay, what did you choose?
What languages do you speak and when do you use them? So I'm willing to hear from the others what an open-ended survey question is.
Okay, do we have somebody that wants to help us with an open-ended survey question? Mercy.
I think a question is open-ended when it doesn't come with like options or leading answers. Like it's left to you. It's based on your experience. Something like what you
Yes,
know.
yes.
Though I
Both of
chose the
you.
wrong answer. No.
What did you choose?
I said, though I chose the wrong answer.
Oh, sorry about that. Vivian, you're welcome. So, sorry about that.
Yeah, I've been struggling with network and so.
Oh, sorry about that. So, the correct answer is, what language do you speak and when do you use them? Open-ended, just like the name is left open for people to put their views, not that they are being restricted with options. If you have a question that you've put option, you've made it closed-ended. So the correct answer should be C. Then question 6. Question 6. Most of us got it correctly, but for the sake of the person that missed it, let me still treat it. What does a control group help to do in experimental design and experimental research? It provides a baseline for comparison, not to eliminate experiment bias. No, it provides a baseline for comparison. So when you have the control group, any other thing you're doing, you can always compare it with the control group. I hope we understand. We have a bit of understanding of what I'm trying to say.
No, please come again.
You do not have. Okay, so a quick one. For example, this is an example that is not related at all to your field of study, but maybe so that you can have an idea. So there was a work I did few years ago, and it's like a medical course, and the client was to use Western rats to examine effect of cigarette smoking on their kidney biomarkers. And then they were feeding the rats with cigarettes every morning and night. So there were 36 rats, and they were grouped into 6. So they had 6 groups. So each of the groups were given different levels of cigarettes. Now, there is the 6th group. No cigarette was given to them. That's like a control group, where every other thing, you are feeding them with every other thing that is the same food, the same cleaning, but you didn't feed them with cigarettes. So anything you are examining in the one with 1 cigarette, in the group with 1 cigarette, the group with 2 cigarettes, the group with 3 cigarettes, you can always compare it with the control group that you didn't feed any cigarette to. So that's why it provides a baseline for comparison. I hope you understand that now, Heritage.
Yes, I do.
All right. Okay, so the 7th question, a Likert scale question is an example of which type of data collection tool? It is ordinal closed-ended item. Now that I've explained open-ended, I'm sure now we know that it is not open-ended. For those of us that chose open-ended, so it's not open-ended. Then the question 8, which of the following increases the reliability of survey data? Increases the reliability of survey data. Is pretesting the survey. Ms. Kafaya mentioned it the other time. When you pretest your survey, when you conduct a pilot study, it helps the reliability. If you do a pilot study of a questionnaire, you would know the questions that should be removed before you go to do your main field work. So leading questions is not the answer. Leading question What leading question means is that you're giving a question where you have already kind of stated how you want them to respond. Something like it is good to brush your teeth every day, right? That kind of question. Every same person will know that what you're trying to say is that it is good. And then double-barreled question in a questionnaire. Double-barrel question means two questions in one. It is a very, very wrong way of setting questions for questionnaire. It's a very, very wrong way. Your questionnaire should carry, every question should just carry one questions. So when you have 2 or 3 questions together in a question, when you say, what is this? If yes, all those kind of questions, or you have cleaning is good and something, it has become double-barreled question, so it must carry one questions. So they are not testing the reliability. It is pre-testing your survey, conducting a pilot study that actually tests the reliability. Then the 9th question, in a linguistic experiment, counterbalancing helps to avoid other effects in repeated measures. Not to choose the best hypothesis, but to avoid other effects in repeated measures. Then the last one is also interesting, as all of you picked different answers. What is the one major limitation of observational research? What is the one major limitation of observational research? Is the inability to manipulate variables. I mentioned it the other time, inability to manipulate the variables. That's what will even lead you to conduct an observational study in the first place. So those are the questions. We are going to post probably by tomorrow a question, set of questions for you as an assignment for you to do, and then we'll give you the deadline for you to do. Do we have any questions? Any question?
Okay, please also help post the question Prof wants us to sort or solve.
Sorry, I didn't get that. We should post what?
Please also post a coherent sentence or question on what Prof wants us to do with R. I think you guys said the deadline was 26th or something.
Okay.
Yes, please. Like a reminder, something like that too.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other question, any other thing? Okay, so if there are no other questions, please let's make it on time for Thursday's class, and this particular course will continue next week. So see you on Thursday, everyone.
Okay, see you too.
Thank you, Miss Honey and Sapphire. Thank you so much.